Hey friends, over 60% of you are listening to me right now on an Apple product. iPhone, iPad, iTunes. I need your help. The truth is, Apple will make this podcast more discoverable to new listeners the more reviews it has. So I'm here asking you to take a moment and leave a review. If you've gained any value from this podcast, the greatest thing you can do for it, besides spreading the word and telling friends, is leaving a review. It's real simple. If you're on your phone, head over to my podcast page within the Apple Podcast app and leave a review. Or if you're on a computer, you can head over to my podcast page within the iTunes app. That's it. That's all I ask. And if you have other podcasts that you love, do them a favor and do the same for them. It'll make their day. Now let's get this podcast started already. Welcome to the Gary Cantrell podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in for another week. Before we get too far into the podcast, I just want to thank Conrad Thompson for joining me last week. Really do appreciate him for coming on and talking about the podcast game. I really got a lot of good insight from Conrad on, what kind of steps he's taking to run a successful podcast. And not that is necessarily all things that I or anyone else should take in terms of like advice for their podcast, because I really believe like no matter what you do, nobody's like what's working for them is not always going to work for you or for me or anything like that. You've got to kind of figure out your own way. I think that so much in today's world, we are, and we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Of, let me Google this, let me Google that, let me see what I can do to basically figure out how I want to do whatever, How do I want to lose weight? Let me Google that. How do I start a podcast? Let me Google that. We could definitely talk about, how to start a podcast and things like that, because I can definitely, I've definitely been in that world for many years. I've not necessarily been super duper successful or had hundreds of thousands or, 500,000 people listening to my podcast, but I know what it takes to get things started, to get the ball rolling. What you do beyond that point is entirely up to you, honestly. So big ups to Conrad for joining me on last week's podcast and sharing some good knowledge. And as far as he and Bruce are concerned, they did a live show in Baltimore. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but as far as they're concerned, I continue to wish them nothing but the absolute best and success, because they've really found such a good formula. They have really good formula together, and I wish them nothing but the best. I think that as long as they continue on the track that they're on now, they are going to be super successful. So, I told you last week, I'll tell you again, we're keeping ads to this podcast at an absolute minimum, okay? Honest to God, that's what we're doing. We're not going to pepper you every 5, 15 to 20 minutes with ads, because number one, I ain't got no advertisers. That's part one. That's a pretty big key. I have an affiliate link. I'll tell you about that in a second. And part two, I just think that it's not good in any podcast, and the top podcasters in the world will disagree with me because they're making a ton of money on ads. But I also said last week in my show that I would never promise you that there wouldn't be ads. If the advertisers come along and they're willing to pay to be on this podcast, when it ultimately becomes viable for them to do so, we will have ads on this podcast, but I'm going to make it in a way that it's not going to be overbearing. So, as of right now, this is episode 2, and we ain't got no advertisers. I have an Amazon affiliate link, and I'm going to tell you about that and that only. And I'm going to tell you once at the top of every show and once at the end of every show. See, there you go. I told you exactly what I'm going to do with my ad strategy. That's it. Completely honest and transparent. Now, that's not to say that if I'm talking about something and I happen to mention a product that I'm using, that I might not sneak in the oh so clever, well, you could pick this up at Amazon using my link. I will absolutely throw that in there, but I'm not going to force it in there. So that's just me being completely honest and transparent with you as far as ads on this podcast. So with that out of the way, Gary'sPodcast.com/Amazon. It's a redirect to Amazon's front page, which has my affiliate code embedded in the link. And basically any purchases you make going to that link, I get a couple of pennies off them. You don't pay anything extra. It's just Amazon says, hey, thanks for referring this buyer, and here's a couple of pennies for your trouble. You guys shop enough on Amazon, and I get enough points or whatever, and it could end up to dollars. Who knows? Anything's possible. The other way to do this is you can go to Amazon, you can go to Gary'sPodcast.com, and there's a link on the menu bar just below my lovely face. There's a menu bar. It has links to things about the podcast, and you can just simply go to the far end. It says shop on Amazon. You can click that link and begin shopping on Amazon, and I get the credit for it. That's basically how Amazon affiliate links work, and that's the deal. So if you like what I'm doing, if you decide, hey, I want to help you out, then that's the way you can do it. As of right now, that is the sole exclusive way that you'll be able to do that. Okay? And like I said last week, this is the last thing I'll try to reference so I don't say, and like I said last week 100 times, like I said last week, I'm not looking to get rich off this thing. If for whatever reason this podcast somehow goes viral or people are really into it and advertisers jump on board and I make a ton of money, I'm going to be absolutely thrilled. I'm not one of these suckers or idiots that says, hey, man, I'm just doing this for the love of the game, or one of those things. Because while, yes, I'm doing this for a hobby, knowing full and well that I'm not making any money off of it, I also am not going to pretend like, I don't want any money off this thing. I'm just doing it for love, man, the love of the game, yeah. If somebody waved $1 million in my face, I'm absolutely going to take that $1 million and continue to deliver the podcast as close to this format as possible. That's the bottom line. My AC just went off. I don't know if you guys can hear that AC in the background. I am trying to get the sound quality the best it possibly can be, and I haven't got any complaints on the first episode, so knock on wood. I don't have any wood in front of me, otherwise I would have knocked on it by now. So with all that out of the way, the last week recaps and the plugs and all that stuff out of the way, let's actually start the podcast this week. No guests this week, so you're just talking to me and me alone, and this is what I got going on. So after I recorded the podcast with Conrad, we released episode 1, and I got a lot of good feedback from you guys. I really appreciate all the feedback that I got so far. Just keep it coming. I always appreciate some good feedback. Good or bad, for the record. But so far, people dig this new format, especially people that have heard my older shows, and they have an appreciation for the format I'm doing now. So I do definitely appreciate it. The podcast came out on, Wednesday? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Wednesday night, excuse me. Wednesday night, and I think we're going to aim for Wednesday every week. I think that's like the new goal. That's what we're shooting for. Every Wednesday, you get a new podcast. There may be a week or two here or there where I might miss one. I'm going to try to absolutely deliver one every single week, but I'm leaving it slightly non-committal just in case anything comes up. Again, as you've heard on previous, like the introduction podcast, and I might have mentioned this last week, there are times in my life when my real job takes over, when life gets absolutely crazy. Things are actually about to get crazy in my life now. Can't really share a whole lot of it yet, but as I can, I will. And sometimes there's going to be time where I might be late on a podcast. Maybe I record it on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and you get it a day later, and I will, of course, come on that podcast and apologize to you. but I'm going to try to get everything as I possibly can on time and every Wednesday. That's looking like the release date. So that out of the way, I released the podcast on Wednesday, and we've seen some good feedback on Thursday and Friday. Friday, I went to the Granger Smith concert. Granger Smith, country artist. He has a couple songs on the radio right now. Backroad song, If the Boot Fits, and his new one, Happens Like That. It's probably the his most recent song. A great track. So I had just a regular general admission ticket, and he offers the VIP upgrade. So I had the VIP upgrade, and this is what I really like about the Granger Smith experience. And I've met a lot of bands via their VIP upgrade option, and a lot of them are very standard. And I don't want to say, when I say they're very standard, I don't mean they're very standard like in a negative connotation. I mean standard as in they're all kind of the same, but it's still cool to meet these people. And I've met artists like Maren Morris, like Low Cash, Thomas Rhett, Brett Eldridge. Most of these are primarily country. That's usually what I've been listening to recently. I do listen to other stuff. And as we get deeper in this podcast, I will share the kind of musical stuff that I'm into. I saw Metallica a couple of weeks ago in Baltimore. So there are many different things that I like, and you will understand, especially those of you that are new, maybe you've never heard of me, or you've never heard this format of the podcast, but maybe you know of me. I will share my music with you. Believe me, I will make it known what I'm listening to, because music is a big part of my life, and the appeal to some people is to listen, to hear about what I like in music. So I will definitely be getting deeper into that. So the typical VIP experience, the standard, we'll call it the base model. We'll use a car analogy here. The base model kind of goes like this. You get let in the venue early, you go to a different section of the venue, and the artist will come out, usually play acoustically for a song or two, maybe a little Q&A, and then you stand in a line in front of an artist backdrop, and you take a picture with them. You get to shake their hand. You get roughly 30 seconds to a minute of interaction, and on the way you go. You're off. You're off running your ass off to the stage, because everybody that has this VIP upgrade option gets the first dibs on the spots. Like any club, if you're from the DC area, 930 Club, Fillmore in Silver Spring, Maryland, these are just regular kind of clubs. There's a stage, an open floor. There might be some balconies. There's my Apple Watch going off. Don't know if you guys heard that, but it says that I had my longest streak move, 52 days. Fantastic. Anyway, so once you meet the artist, you're off to the stage, and you hold that spot all night, because you will lose your spot. It kind of irritates me a lot of times when people kind of leave their spot and they go and get drinks all night long, and then they got to squeeze through and push people out of the way to get back to their spot. Me, I take a different approach. Now, if you're one of those people, it's a pet peeve to me, but if people are willing to let you back in, so be it. I'm not going to cuss you out because you are bumping around. If I knew you were there, you were there. I mean, I'm not here to persuade you not to do it. I don't like it, but me personally, I don't care. I usually go to the bathroom before I meet these artists, and I meet the artist, and I go to the stage, and I'm there all night till the end of the show. I don't lose my spot, and I get the best possible spot I can. And, usually if there's ladies around, if they're shorter, I try to let them in front so they can see. If I'm second row, it's not a big deal. It's not a problem. So that's the typical VIP experience. And like I said, I don't want to try to put a negative connotation on it. It's more or less, this is kind of just the standard. This is how it goes. And I like that. I think it's nice. And a lot of artists, they offer it very cheaply. $50, $75. I think the highest one I saw was like $100. Granger Smith takes it a different approach. So for $25, he has, and I've not done this experience, so I can't speak to it, But it's all on his website, grangersmith.com. There you go, Granger. If you somehow stumble upon this podcast by accident, I'm giving you a plug there. Not that you need the help, because you're doing awesome. And I was nowhere near talking this confident when I met you, but we'll get to that in just a moment. You can go to his website, and he sells these things right on his website. There's a silver and a gold. The silver is very simple. It's a lot like the experience I just explained, pre-show acoustic, maybe a Q&A. I think his is a little bit different than this as far as the silver. And a picture with him on a backdrop, and you're on your way. For $50, for the gold experience, you get a one-on-one personal meet and greet with Granger Smith. You get an autographed photo. You get a lanyard that says VIP. And I'm a sucker for these things. Can I just say this really quick? I'm a sucker for these VIP lanyards. Growing up, you'd watch movies or you'd see shows, concerts on TV or whatever. Or later on, when I was playing in local bands, the bigger bands would come through and they'd have their laminate, and it just looked so freaking cool. When I was in a band, I always had like the carabiner clip on the side of my jeans, whatever keys I had, and then like a backstage laminate, for my band. Or there was a brief time where I was booking shows with my cousin Jimmy. Jimmy, if you're ever stumbling upon this, man, what a crazy time that was, huh? Wow. And basically, I love these laminates. That's what they call them, laminates. I love these things. I don't really like the stick-on stuff that they use. I wish they would use laminates. Maybe the stickers are cheaper. They're probably cheaper. Absolutely, they're probably cheaper. But I like laminates. I'm a laminate guy. Granger Smith says, guess what? You got the VIP laminate. This is awesome. It's got his picture. It says VIP. On the back, it says 2017. And there's like a big blank spot on the back that, he'll sign for you. But I'll get to that in a moment. So you get a personal one-on-one meet and greet with Granger. You get early access into the venue. You get the laminate. You get an autographed 8x10 photo of Granger. And so I was wondering, what does personal exactly mean? Because, when you do these meet and greets, in a sense, it's personal because you stand in a line, and when it's your turn, you walk up to the artist, you shake their hand, you say anything you've ever wanted to say to this person that you really like, and you try to get it out very quickly. Or you're like me, and you're absolutely crazy nervous and have no idea what to say, even though you've spent the last probably 3 weeks planning what you're going to say to this person. And this happens every single time I meet somebody famous. They probably think I'm crazy, and it's really uncomfortable. But man, I love meeting these people because music has a big spot in my life. And, it's like I want to tell these people what they mean to me, what their music means to me. And then you can't get the words out because you're so freaking nervous. So anyway, you wonder what a personal meet and greet is with Granger Smith. And that's what I thought. I'm like, okay, well, you're lining up. I thought maybe the silver was like a group photo. Okay, here all the silvers get together. We're going to take a group photo with Granger. Some artists do that. I've not been a part of, I've been a part of one of those. One of those. When I met Thomas Rhett and Brett Eldridge, they kind of gave you both. You got to take a picture with both of them together. It's like a little package, which for me, meeting Thomas Rhett and Brett Eldridge at the same time was awesome because when my father-in-law, Double J, was getting me into country music, the first two guys I heard were Brett Eldridge and Thomas Rhett. Brett Eldridge had Don't Ya on the radio. Thomas Rhett had Get Me Some of That on the radio. And these were the songs that I was hearing. And coming from a background of like pop punk and emo, which is completely different, I heard these songs. I'm like, holy crap, these songs are catchy. They got a lot of good hooks in them. I'm freaking hooked. So anyway, so I met these two guys, and to meet them together meant a lot. And I know I'm going off on a lot of different sidebars. But then after you met them individually, they were like, okay, everybody, let's get back together for a group picture. Some artists will have you just do a group picture with them. Maybe there's like a lower tier meet and greet. Maybe you won some from a radio station. Maybe you're paying a small nominal fee. Some artists do like a lottery where you can meet them. And I think that's cool too. I support artists that allow the opportunity for you to pay for the benefit of meeting them, because it's like, wow, I'm guaranteed to meet them. But there are some artists that do a lottery where it's like you sign up on here and you might win meet and greets, and there's no cost to it. You just need a ticket to the show that you were probably already going to anyway. And that's really awesome. Some of the bigger artists do that. Florida Georgia Line, Luke Bryan. I'm thinking of country because these are the kind of shows I'm going to now. So I really think there's something special to that for the lottery to say, hey, we're a bigger artist, but we're going to give all fans a fair chance. That's awesome. Florida Georgia Line recently did something called the Florida Georgia Line Lifer Membership Club. It's like $35 a year, and you get, pre-sale codes before everybody else. You get priority meet and greet stuff, and then they send you like a shirt and a really cool laminate, which I just got in the mail today. I posted it on my Twitter at Gary Cantrell, tweeting them to say, hey, look what I got. I probably sound like a fanboy, and that's fine. But I got the membership because I'm like, I've never met these guys and I really want to meet these guys. And if joining their membership club gets me an even better chance at meeting them, I'm going to take it, because their last album, Dig Your Roots, really meant a lot to me. And I can go into that on a later episode, probably when I go see them live, and I can give you the full experience of what that's all about. But we're talking about Granger Smith. So we'll see how that works out. But back to Granger. So what does one-on-one personal mean? One-on-one for Granger Smith fans who'd never done this before, this blew my mind. So I get to the box office. They send you a little email from his tour manager who says, hey, please bring your ID to the box office. You'll receive your VIP instructions from there. And I'm like, okay, cool. I go there, they have my laminate, I give them my ID, and then I'm in this line. The tour manager comes out, or somebody from his staff, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to bring us into the venue. We're probably going to line up in front of the stage or somewhere off to the side, and we're going to meet Granger. It's going to be awesome because I like Granger. No, that's not exactly how it went. The guy says, we're going to line you up right here, and we're going to go around to the back of the building where the bus is, and you'll meet Granger back there. So I'm like, all right, well, this is kind of working out, right? I'm on a big weight loss kick, so I'm getting to walk around the back of the building. They probably got one of those really cool backdrops set up in front of the bus. I met Low Cash like that at a fair one time, where they were like, hey, anybody that buys a shirt of ours or something like that, we'll give you a meet and greet after the show, and we'll come outside of the bus and we'll meet with everybody, which was awesome. No, that's not how it worked at all. We lined up in front of his bus, and sure enough, the guy comes out, not Granger, but one of the people from his crew, and says, okay, if you're here individually or you're here in a group, please line up accordingly, and we're going to bring you on one by one on the bus. Wait, hold on. What? On the bus? Wait, you're going to take me on the bus? That blew my mind. Okay, so now my mind is blown now, okay? And I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm going to go on his bus to meet him? This is crazy. Now, if you're a female, it's probably really blowing your mind, because there's a lot of girls that go to these concerts and they're like, wow, I'm trying to get with this guy. I'm trying to hook up with the singer, get a hookup, maybe, whatever. As a fanboy, I'll use the term here, or a music nerd or whatever who really likes this guy, I'm like, holy crap, I'm about to go on Granger's bus. This is insane. And as a nice added touch, when you go on the bus, they close the door behind you. So when they say on the website, personal one-on-one meet and greet, there's no false advertisement here, folks. You are meeting Granger Smith one-on-one personally. It's you, him, and the guy who's going to take the picture, which I think is his tour manager. Holy crap. This blew my mind. I could not believe that this was how it's going to go. And then you have all your nervousness just rushing back to the forefront of your mind. And you're trying to think, all right, now how's this going to go? I'm going to go on the bus. Where's he going to be? Is he going to be sitting down? Is he going to be standing up? I don't know. I walk on, I just shake his hand and say, what's up, man? What's going on? To understand how nervous I am at these things, I have to do one more sidebar. I'm sorry, but there was one time where I met Thomas Rhett and Brett Eldridge. I just mentioned that. But what I didn't mention was So the one part about them being the first guys I heard is absolutely true. The other part of it I didn't mention a few moments ago was the fact that, you know, because I'm a musician, it's like, it's really, really, inspirational to me to meet these guys because they've inspired me a lot to write music. And so when I get up there and Thomas Rhett's on the right and Brett Eldridge is on the left. So when I'm walking up to Thomas first and I shake his hand and I'm like, hey, what's up, man? And all this stuff that I've been planning for weeks what I'm going to say to this guy. Because holy crap, you want to talk about like fanboying out? I'm really a fanboy for Thomas Rhett. True story. And I had all this stuff in my mind about how I was going to say, dude, you're such an inspiration. Like I hadn't picked up a guitar in years. And when I heard, get me some of that, it inspired me to want to write, catchy acoustic guitar songs all over again. Like I had all these things in my mind and to say, hey man, Tangled Up is the dopest album I've heard all year. And, I just want to congratulate you on your success. Usually, this is what in my mind that I remember is what I was going to say to Thomas Rhett. And I get up to him and can you guess what I said? None of that. I walked up, I shook his hand and I said, hey man, what's up? That's it. I had literally nothing else to say. And usually when you meet these guys, usually the protocol is they usually have a handler there that's kind of like, I don't want to say necessarily rushing you, but I'm going to say probably, like rushing you, trying to get you through as quick as possible because, there's a line of like 80 people behind you that are trying to do the same exact thing you're doing. And these guys have a specific schedule, they've done their rehearsals. So then they got to do the pre-show VIP, little 2 or 3 song acoustic set. All this stuff is got to be timed out like perfectly from what I gather. So the fact that these guys, now Thomas is actually trying to strike up a conversation. He's like, hey man, what's going on? What's up? And I'm like, oh, you're great. I don't know what else to say at this point. I'm like, I hope it's going to be a good show. He's like, yeah, me too. I really have nothing more to say to this man, even though I spent the last 3 weeks planning word for word what I was going to say when I walked up. Then there's Brett Eldridge. And again, it's one of these things where it's like, hey man, what's up? Nice to meet you. This is what I had planned in my head. Nice to meet you. You've been a big inspiration. I first heard Don't You, and it's what got me into country. My father-in-law was like, singing this song 100 freaking times, and I couldn't get it out of my head, blah, 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 blah. All these things you planned to say, and you couldn't say it. And I was like, just something like, hey, man, congrats on all your success. And that's about all I managed to get out. And the next thing I know, I'm just being whisked away, to get out of the way. And I have no idea what to say. I just froze. And, these guys were nice. Every time I've met one of these artists, I've never got like a negative vibe from any of them. They've always seemed to be so cool. Like there's never been a problem, meeting these people. They've always been super nice and they always seem like they want to, take a moment to hear what you have to say. But then when you get up there like an idiot and you have no clue what to say, even though you planned out what you're going to say, it doesn't really work out so well. So anyway, so they said you're going to go on the bus and meet Granger. That's what we're talking about here. And I'm so nervous at this point that I'm almost, I'm not quite shaking, but like I'm like mentally shaking. And I get on the bus, coolest guy in the world. Hey man, what's going on? I'm Granger. And like, hey, I'm Gary. And this was the first time in a long time that I've met one of these people that I've actually been able to get out more than just, hey, I'm such and such, love your stuff, congrats, see ya. I was actually telling about, hey, in the last year or two, I've been really trying to like write music again. And, guys like you and Thomas Rhett and Brett Eldridge, I name dropped them. And I was like, guys like you guys have been inspiring me. And, thank you so much for your music because whether it's a good time I'm going through or a bad time, these songs get me through it. Whether they fit my situation or not, hearing good music can either make you feel really, really good when you're already feeling good, or if you're having a bad day and you feel like crap, listening to these songs that you like can build you up at least a little bit. So, I was able to thank him for all that, but I couldn't help but think in the background of my mind, holy crap, I'm stumbling over a few words. I'm, really, really nervous. And this guy, he probably sees these people all the time. He probably really, deals with these kind of people all the time. There's probably like the really excited younger crowd that either is crying or they're super nervous, but they'll say they're super nervous. And then there's like, I've never personally met people that are just easily cool and able to just go with the flow and not come off as nervous. But you've got those kind of people, or you got me, and I'm like, mid-30s, and I have no clue how to properly tell him what I want to say, because it's like, you listen to me right now on this podcast, and whether you like necessarily what I'm talking about or you don't, you might say, okay, wow, this Gary, he's a decent communicator. Yeah, he stumbles over a few words here or there, but, I think this podcast is at least listenable, right? God, I hope so if you're still listening to it 30 minutes in. But holy crap, has it been 30 minutes already? That's insane. And I haven't even got to the payoff of the story yet. But it's like, and then I meet these people that inspire me, and it's so hard to, come up with the words to say. So if for whatever reason, for some random reason, Granger or one of his people comes across this podcast, dude, I'm sorry for being so nervous. And I must tell you that I definitely am into your stuff, and you have inspired me to want to write good music. And yeah, I really like your stuff. It helps me get through the good times and the bad. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for the time. That's it. That's all I had to say. And I could have gotten that point across in the time allotted. I probably had about 2 minutes with him. So you can imagine like what's a normal 2 minutes, and then what's 2 minutes when you're super nervous and you're stumbling and it's really awkward. Like I was removing my VIP pass from around my neck to hand it to him to sign, and I almost dropped it. It's just, it was so bad for me. Like him, it was probably just cool. It's like, hey, I'm meeting this guy, whatever. I'm just, I'm happy to meet a fan. He probably appreciates the support. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. I'm just guessing what he's probably thinking. And I'm just sitting here like an idiot with all this anxiety in my brain. And I think it's normal. People will probably say, oh, you're totally overreacting. That's a normal reaction. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But, I don't know. So it was cool to meet Granger. He's a really, really nice guy. And I just, I think it's cool for any artist like that to give you the opportunity to meet them in that kind of environment. That's so cool that they would offer up such an experience for their fans. What a cool environment to meet somebody that has inspired you. Think about how many other avenues, whether it be actors, comedians, although you can meet some comedians that maybe inspired you to do something, and there's no way you'd have access to them. You could tweet them, and you could hope that they would see it, read it, get back to you, but maybe they won't. So to have this kind of way to be able to get a hold of somebody is pretty damn cool. To share with them what they meant to you. And so there you go. I just said everything there previously that I should have said to Granger. So there you go. And then not to mention the show. The show was awesome. I got to give a shout out to my man, Brandon, and his lady. I hang out with them a lot of times at these Fillmore shows in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's a lot of fun. I met them at the Chris Lane, Dustin Lynch show back in February of 2016. It was so freaking cold that weekend. In fact, I was standing outside of the bus talking with one of Granger Smith's guitar players, and he remembered the show. There was 2 shows that weekend. The first show was a Stars and Guitars, like a radio station sponsored event. It was like all acoustic. Granger Smith, Brothers Osborne, Maren Morris, Easton Corbin. Really awesome show. But the guitarist was like, yeah, man, I remember that weekend was cold as hell, man. It was crazy. I was like, wow, if you remember that kind of cold, then that's when you know it's cold, okay? So I met Brandon and his girl that weekend. They were actually at the Stars and Guitars, but they were sitting up in the balcony, and I was on the floor. And they had actually mentioned that they remembered seeing me that night. And I saw them in line at the Dustin Lynch show the next night, and they're like, hey, weren't you here last night? We think we saw you in the crowd. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I had a extra meet and greet for Chris Lane, and that whole Chris Lane thing is like another story. I guess we can get into it here. I probably should move along though, but I don't want to take too much time on one topic. But I had 2 meet and greets, because anytime you win these things, it's never just one; it's a pair of meet and greets. And so I offered them to either Brandon or his lady. And of course, he's a true gentleman. He gave it to his lady. And so we went and met Chris Lane, and that was really cool. And then we kind of hit it off after that. We followed each other on Instagram. Cheap plug, Gary Cantrell Instagram, Gary's podcast Instagram. I need to do something with Gary's podcast on Instagram. I'm going to think of what I'm going to do with it, but follow it in the meantime, if you will. And, we hit each other up on DM like, hey, man, you going to this show? Yeah, let's meet up. And they like to sit up in the balcony. And I've always been like a general admission floor guy. But there's something to be said for the Fillmore specifically, because it's not like 930 Club in D.C. where everything is literally standing. There are no seats. And if there are, I've never seen them, or they've recently added them. But Fillmore, the entire upper deck is all seats. And you can pay a small extra fee to access these seats, and you can pay a little bit more for the VIP box. We opted to get the VIP box. So we hit it off. We've seen a couple of shows hanging out together, which is a lot of fun. We went to a Kane Brown show one time, and that was really awesome. So this particular time, we met up and we got the VIP box. It's like $30 a head. And it's kind of cool because you have like a waitress who will come and serve you drinks and whatnot. I had like 1 beer. When I started this weight loss thing, I never actually said that, hey, you're not allowed to drink beer. There's a couple things where I said, you're not allowed to have like McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, stuff like that. No soda, 100% no soda. But everything else was kind of like a soft ban. Like, in other words, these are things that if I truly wanted them, I would work it in somehow. But I didn't impose like this, you are not allowed to have this. So I had 1 beer, sue me. So it was a lot of fun hanging out with Brandon and his girl. And we watched Granger Smith. So back to Granger Smith. So Granger Smith comes on, and he is awesome. There was a guy opening for him, Shane. I think it's Shane Gambler. I need to check him out on iTunes because I've not listened to him yet. The live show of his was cool. I don't want to say that, he was like super memorable. There's sometimes where you hear that opening act and they're amazing. I heard Shane, and he had some good stuff, but it wasn't like, holy crap, what did I just see? That doesn't mean he's bad or anything like that. It just means that, for me personally, he was all right. He's cool. I was bobbing my head to a little bit of his stuff. And then after he finishes up, Granger Smith comes on. Granger Smith plays for about an hour and a half, and he's tearing through his catalog. Backroad Song, If the Boot Fits, Tonight, Echo, Happens Like That. He's got some older tracks. I'm kind of a newer Granger fan. I kind of discovered him personally like in the last year or so. His latest album, Remington, is kind of like what I know. That's my frame of reference for Granger Smith. So, those songs are all good to me. And then the older songs, I'm kind of still learning. I just went back this past week and added some of his older catalog to my Apple Music so that I could understand some of his other stuff and start to know it, because what I heard live sounded really, really good. So I was definitely into it. And then he's got this character, this Earl Dibbles Jr., who comes out like in overalls and a white tank top, and he's chewing on dip. He's got Bud Light cans, chugging Bud Light cans. His mic post is like a rifle. Just some crazy stuff. But Granger is like the ultimate showman. So whether he's being Granger Smith or Earl Dibbles Jr., he's putting on such a good show. Like, he's really, really good at it. Every song sounded really good, really tight. You know, the show flowed really nicely. And his fans are so cool. I didn't meet like one asshole in the crowd. Yeah, everybody was cool. Everybody was totally cool. There's a lot of this yee thing that he does, and you heard that all night long. He has like yee hats and flags and energy drinks, I think, and all this kind of stuff. But all night long you hear yee, and so it's a pretty wild thing. So we saw the show. It was really, really good, and I just left with this really good feeling like, wow, I just saw an awesome show. So I would recommend, if, number one, you have not heard of Granger Smith, but you're into country, somehow you haven't stumbled upon him, you need to check him out. If you're somebody who does not necessarily like country, but you just like good music in general, he's still absolutely worth checking out. But I'd probably, for somebody that's not really into country, it's going to be hard to kind of win you over. But I can tell you that his music is very, very catchy. And I would definitely check out some of the radio stuff, like Backroad Song, If the Boot Fits. And so if you're not really into country, but you don't hate it, you know, you're kind of open-minded, you can jump into Backroad Song or If the Boot Fits and kind of understand where he's coming from. And I'm guaranteeing you're almost going to really dig it. Probably more than likely you'll be into it. So that was the Granger Smith show. Saturday did some cool family stuff. Went to a cookout, had some fun there. I got really, really hammered. Something I've not done in a long time. I love Land Shark beer, so I had a 6-pack of Land Shark beer. Luckily, I was letting myself cheat a little bit from my diet on Saturday to allow room for 6 Land Shark beers. They were delicious. And then there was things like hot dogs and barbecue and potato salad and all this stuff. And I just remember drinking a lot of Land Shark. And then I had some Fireball, some Wild Turkey, and some peach-flavored Bird Dog. I don't know what Bird Dog is, but it's just something that was there. And so these combinations got me really, really hammered. And I got home and I slept really hard that night. I'm lucky I did not wet the bed. Honestly, there's been a couple times where I got pretty hammered, and that's happened. And I'm not embarrassed to say it. You know, it happens. I'll throw it out there. I'm an honest guy, really. I am, and I don't mind saying that. But I did get pretty hammered on Saturday. Sunday comes around, and I've got all kinds of plans on Sunday. So first things first, you know, despite drinking heavily and not feeling 100% Sunday morning, I still got my ass in the gym and I worked out. And that is huge. This is what you can tell by my determination. Even getting hammered the night before, I'm still in the gym, and I'm in that gym at 8:30 in the morning. Okay. I'm not in the gym at noon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon after I've slept all day. I'm in the gym at 8:30 in the morning, and I'm back to the grind. And I actually worked out a little bit harder because I know how badly I cheated Saturday night. And I still lost 2 pounds on my weekly weigh-in, which was awesome. That brought me to a grand total of 60 pounds exactly that I've lost since January 1. So drinking all that beer, eating like crap, and I went to the gym and I still hustled, and I managed to lose 2 pounds over the course of the week. So that is awesome. I had to go to the gym early because I had two things going on in Baltimore. So my area, Northern Virginia area, it's going to take you roughly, with okay traffic, about an hour, hour and a half to get out to Baltimore. If the traffic is terrible, add an hour at least, okay? At least an hour. The Conrad Thompson, who's my guest last week, he has that podcast, Something to Wrestle, with Bruce Pritchard, and they were doing a live podcast in Baltimore, actually Dundalk to be more specific, at Jimmy's Famous Seafood. I had VIP meet and greets, so I needed to get there early, and despite my best efforts to get there early, when I drove up to Jimmy's Famous Seafood, and for the record, Jimmy's Famous Seafood is not in downtown Baltimore or anything like that. It is like on the outskirts, man. And I'm not trying to disparage the business, because they were nothing but A+ all the way. This place is like in the middle of like an industrial area. It almost looked shady as hell. And then you drove up to this place, and there it was. And it was a nice place. There's nothing wrong with it. I get up there and I ask somebody in line, hey, is this the line for general admission or VIP? Turns out all these people were VIP. One of the first people I met when I got there was a guy named Nick. And Nick was there with his father. Really cool guy. We were talking about the Pritchard Show. We were talking about podcasting in general. One of the cool things about meeting wrestling fans is you can have an open dialogue about the current product of wrestling. And if you meet people in person, and I'm not talking about people on Reddit that, you know, have different random screen names and just talk crazy crap. I'm talking like having real conversations with people is an amazing thing. And so I met Nick, and we talked about Pritchard Show. We talked about podcasting, and we talked about the current wrestling product. And I don't get too deep into that on this podcast, but like just bullet points like Jinder Mahal, or what we thought was going to happen at the Extreme Rules show that night, and just basic stuff. So, and Nick was very kind to say, hey man, if you want, you can sit with me and my dad, you know, we're going to find a table. So you get in this room, and there's all these round tables, and there's like the first few tables at the very front that have VIP marked on them, and they seat roughly 6 to 8. So you pick which seat you want. But wait a minute, I'm bypassing the whole meeting Bruce and Conrad thing. I met them already in Orlando, but the VIP, it comes with a meet and greet, so I got to take my picture with them. It was kind of cool because looking at this picture, I actually looked really slim. I'm not going to say like rail skinny thin, but I was like, damn, dude, you looking good in this pic. You know, you got the black shirt on. Black is really thinning. And picture day with Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson. And I looked pretty doggone sharp, let me tell you. I was very thrilled with how I looked in this picture, not embarrassed in the slightest. And I am self-conscious as hell about photos that I post online, just because I don't know how they're going to turn out. Unless I get drunk and I go on my Instagram and I post pictures of me drunk. But then people, if not that they ever say anything, usually I just get a bunch of likes on it. But if they ever did say anything, I was drunk. Gets me out of that one. I'm not going on like a video and saying crazy things. I'm just literally taking a goofy picture with my eyes half closed and my mouth wide open with a big smile. Wow, you can see my wet mouth with, beer condensation and everything on it. It's like, wow, what a crazy picture. So I'm really self-conscious about my photos, but I thought I looked really good in this photo. It's on my social media. You can find it easily on my Twitter at Gary Cantrell. But meeting Bruce and Conrad again was really, really cool. Bruce did not remember me from Orlando, and that's not completely unnatural. I mean, we've had some interaction on Twitter, some good back and forth before, but I don't think he knows me well enough to know, to remember me. Conrad obviously remembers me, number one, because I was on the podcast. He was on my podcast, excuse me. I was not on their podcast. No guests needed on the Pritchard Show, by the way. And he tells Bruce, you don't remember Gary? Bruce is like, no, what's Gary? Gary is the one that gargled Jack Daniels on stage in Orlando. And this was kind of like this cool little thing in Orlando because they had this thing where basically somebody brought up 2 shots of Jack Daniels. And Bruce, I think Conrad pours his shot of Jack into Bruce's cup and tells Bruce to drink it. Bruce's like, I'm not drinking that. And Conrad's like, I'm not drinking that. And then they go on to say, basically, is there anyone crazy enough to drink this Jack? I raise my hand. I drink the Jack. Conrad screams to gargle it. I gargle it. I pound my fist on my chest like a crazy barbarian. And 300 people in Orlando are chanting, please don't die at me. It was really, really awesome. And I still lived. And so he tells Bruce, and Bruce's like, oh man, he's here to tell the tale. He's still here. This is awesome. Like, everybody thought he was going to die that night. I'm like, it's just one shot of, or 2 shots of Jack all at once. What could possibly go wrong? And I did slightly leave in that I was like, by the way, I'm coming to your show in New York too. So if you need a Jack gargler, I'm there for you. So I got the picture with them. They signed a picture for me, and I'm on my way. And I see this guy who I recognize, but I don't know the guy. I've never met the guy. And I look at him, and I'm like, remember, because, as far as like fans of the Pritchard Show, there's like people that you see them retweet or whatever, or I've interacted with on Twitter. And one of the guys is a guy who is a fan of the show, but he also contributes to the show, a man by the name of Dave Silva, who does all the graphic work for their show. When they announce a brand new episode, he's basically like photoshopping their faces into these photos of like old events, or like recreating new versions of these old events, and they're really funny. Great work. Check him out on Twitter. Give him a follow at DG Silva 1975. Dave, it was so nice to meet you. So real quick though, before I get into that, so I'm like, holy crap, is that Dave Silva? And now I am really awkward when it comes to meeting new people. You should know that about me. If we ever meet in the future and you're listening to the show and I've never met you, I can be really, really awkward about meeting people for the first time. I'm socially awkward to a point. Once we meet and we talk, everything's cool. And you're probably listening to this like, holy crap, dude, you've done nearly an hour on a podcast and you can't meet somebody without freaking out. I'm like, yeah, it's true. It's totally true. So I meet Dave, and he's really, really cool. Really nice guy. I'm like, holy crap, are you Dave Silva? He's like, yeah, man. I'm like, yeah, I'm Gary. Nice to meet you. Holy crap. Nice guy. And then I saw him again before I left, and I shook his hand again and just said it was nice to meet him. It's nice to put a face to the Twitter account. When you make friends online, and I'm being very careful about how that goes now, because, I've kind of gotten burned in the past with that, and, meeting friends and they flake out on you, and it can be not so good. But I will say that, when you can put a face to the name and you can actually meet them and shake their hand, it goes a long way. So it's really cool to meet Dave. Speaking of which, some other people that I previously worked with online, Jim from 3 Count Thursday. 3 Count Thursdays, a wrestling podcast that I used to work with when I did the Wrestling Informant website, and they were really nice guys. They have a good podcast. Check them out. Twitter handle, 3 Count Thursday. And Jim, is it Jim Knees? Jim Nyes? Jim, if you're listening, I hope I didn't mess up either one of those or completely get it wrong. And you're like, dude, you're butchering my name. So I met Jim. I shook his hand. Really nice guy. So it's kind of good to meet some people. And then after I met Jim and I met Dave Silva, I then went to, I met up with Nick again, and we were trying to find where we were going to sit. We found a table at the very, very front of the building, and Conrad and Bruce got up there and they proceeded to do 2 hours. They killed it. It was awesome. So I will say this, If you are somebody that listens to my podcast and you are, number one, a fan of podcasts, and two, a fan of wrestling, this podcast, if for some strange reason is not on your radar, it needs to be on your radar. These guys are doing one of the best wrestling podcasts. Actually, let me take that back. The best wrestling podcast. And there's a lot out there. And as far as like new kind of like news and stuff like that, I usually listen to Observer Radio with Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer. But as far as like wrestling podcasts, the Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson, that's the one I look forward to. They talk about stuff from my childhood, and I really, really enjoy it. And I think that if you're any kind of fan of wrestling or a podcast, this show will appeal to you. I really believe that. And if for some reason you have not stumbled upon this podcast, please do yourself a favor and go and check it out. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about what all they did at their live show. If you are somebody who does listen to their show and you've not been to one of their live shows, I've been to 2 of them now, so I can speak from experience. You need to go see them live if they come anywhere near your town. It is a great show. They give you a lot of value for your dollar, and they talk about stuff that's local to the area that they're in, or they try to anyway. And then obviously, fans will chime in with inside references or like really good zingers, and they'll react to that. It's a really good live show. And then they usually bring in a special guest. In Orlando, it's no surprise because they've talked about it and whatnot. Jeff Jarrett came and sang With My Baby Tonight. And then on this show, Nikolai Volkov was a special guest, and he came on and sang With My Baby Tonight, which was kind of crazy. But it was really cool to see Nikolai Volkov, a true legend in the world of wrestling, show up to the show. I believe he lives either in Baltimore or very close to Baltimore, so it was a good fit. So I left there and I had to go to Royal Farms Arena for Extreme Rules. So let me tell you something. I believe in this world there are really, really good people out there. A lot of times we get hindered with a lot of the negativity, whether it be, viral posts on Facebook where person A believes this and says this, and then person B is the complete opposite, and X, Y, and Z, they're all fighting with each other about this topic or whatever, or you hear about scams on the internet and all that kind of stuff. And there is all that out there. That's absolutely true. But on the same token, there's some really, really nice people out there on the internet. And I want to give a shout out to this guy here, Matt. I met Matt on Squared Circle Reddit. Now, if you are a wrestling fan and if you've gone to Reddit, you know the kind of place that Squared Circle Reddit can be. It is a real cesspool at times of like just crappy posts, crazy opinions, people arguing, and once in a while some cool stuff happens. Like they all banded together and got a bouquet of flowers and a fruit basket for NXT, Triple H, and the people in NXT. They, more importantly, more kindlier, got some gigantic collage for TJ Wilson, Tyson Kidd, when he was ill. They've come together and done some cool stuff. But there was a guy who named Matt. I don't know if he wants his Reddit username out there, so I'll just leave that out of this. But he posts a random thread on Reddit that says, "Hey, I'm going to Extreme Rules. I have an extra ticket." And the thread goes like this. I was going to go to Extreme Rules with my dad and my brother backed out, and I have one extra ticket, and I just want to give it to somebody. Who wants to go to this show? So I write him because I'm kind of interested basically at, what he, I'm interested in possibly going. And if I can write him back first and if he can hook me up with a ticket, cool. So I said, yeah, man, I'm already going to be in town for Bruce Pritchard's show. So, if you're offering this ticket, if it's still available, if you would like to give it to me, I'd like to accept. And he says, okay, great. Here's my number. Hit me up right before the show and we'll meet up and we'll go and watch wrestling. And, this was like a month ago. So I'm just thinking to myself, well, I don't know if this guy's legit. Should I just kind of blow it off? Should I, buy a ticket just in case whole thing goes sour? Like, I don't know what plan of action I should take with this. So I just decided to say, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. He could be some crazy killer. I don't know. I'm just going to take a chance because I believe that this may be like the real deal. So it was just like, holy crap. I'm just going to wait. And so he texts me the day of the show and he's like, hey man, I am here or I'm on my way. And God damn, my phone's going off. Sorry guys. Got distracted for a minute. So the day of the show, he texts me. He's like, hey man, let's meet around 6:30. I'll be wearing this. My dad will be wearing that. I'm like, yep, I'll be here in this and blah, 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 blah. And, basically, the whole thing ended up being totally legit. I texted him when I got to the building. I was a little bit earlier than he was because I always try to be early in everything in life. And he was like, I was like, hey man, I'm here. I'm on this corner. This is what I'm wearing again, just to remind him. And we met up and his name was Matt. His father's name was Tom. And they were super nice people. And we talked for a little bit before we went in the building. We let the crowd die down outside before we attempted to go in. He handed me my ticket. The ticket scanned. I got in. And we had really good seats. Now, so again, kind of another local thing. If you've ever been to the Verizon Center in Washington, D.C. or Baltimore Arena, Royal Farms Arena, it used to be called Baltimore Arena. Baltimore Arena is significantly smaller. The best way I can explain these seats, like, if you've ever had main concourse in Verizon Center, like 100 level, and this goes for any kind of, any of you people listening around the country or the world, the main concourse, the lower bowl of your arena, if it's like a decent sized basketball type arena, you know what the 100 section looks like, the main concourse, lower bowl. The tickets we had were actually in the section 208, 208. I don't know why I said 208. That sounded really weird. It was section 208, and I'm like, okay, well, we're up a little high. That's fine. No problem. And when we get in Baltimore Arena, 208 is like the equivalent of the last probably 10 rows of a 100 section lower bowl in Verizon Center. So I sit there, I'm like, holy crap, these seats are like really good. We're halfway between the ring and the stage. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is amazing. I cannot believe that, we have these great seats, and what a nice gesture. So as we close out the podcast today, and I cannot believe an hour has already flown by like this, definitely believe that there is kindness in people. And if you can do something kind for others, please do it. I try to think in my life when I can do something nice for other people, and I do it. I don't mention these things on a podcast because I'm not looking for attention. But I try to do something nice for other people when I can. And I would encourage everybody to believe out there that there are good people, and that, sometimes once in a while, people will surprise you and they'll do nice things. The second part to that is, real quick, the wrestling show was awesome. Good show. Really enjoyed myself. I got home around 1 o'clock and I had to get up at 4:30 a.m. to go to work. This week at my job is kind of like the crazy week. So I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. And I didn't oversleep. And I woke up and I was a little tired, but I got through the day and I went to the gym. Again, I went to the gym. I got my stuff done. I weighed in that day. I was 2 pounds down, total of 60. I was fired up. I was excited. One thing I meant to mention on Friday was 2 of my coworkers surprised me. So one of my coworkers, I was talking with her about Super Mario Brothers 3. She likes video games. I like video games. We have a common ground of interest. We're talking about video games. And I have a Takuni Mario action figure on my desk. Very small, but it's from Mario 3. My favorite Mario game ever, and one of my favorite video games ever. And one day later, we can explain the backstory behind all that. But anyway, I was mentioning to her just in a casual conversation, I really like this Takuni figure, But I really would have preferred the Raccoon Mario that's on the front box of Mario 3, because that's my favorite like design of Mario. It's my favorite look of Mario. And as far as I know, there's no action figure that exists or doll that exists of Mario in that current form. As far as I knew, there was nothing that would suggest that. And we were just like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I can't believe they don't have a figure like that. And we went on about our way. So like a month or two later, this being Friday, she shows up in my office with another guy at work, a really cool guy. They're both in the design world of my job. And they have a box. We have a present for you, Gary. And I'm like, what? A present? What? I didn't ask for presents. What's going on here? And I open it up, and I see Mario in the box. Like on the side of the box, there's like this question mark. You know, those little blocks that you jump up and you hit, and they usually throw down like a mushroom or something. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And before I can fully get it out of the box, they're telling me, well, you did say that you could never find a Mario 3 action figure, and well, we found one. What? My mind is blown at this point. I could not believe it. I wasn't going to cry. I didn't get like super emotional because I can be a very emotional person at times. But I was literally like dumbstruck. Like I could not figure out how exactly to put into words what I wanted to say at that point in time. And I was just like, my first instinct was, I need to hug these people. That was my first instinct. Because when you think about that, just some random conversation that you have with somebody, sometimes people remember what you say, and they remember, you know, something that you said, and it strikes a memory at some point, and sometimes it ends up in people doing really cool stuff for you. So I left my job Friday on the way to the Granger Smith show with a whole heart full of happiness, because somebody at my job thought about me for longer than a minute and said, this guy really wants a Mario 3 figure. He thinks they don't exist. I found one. I'm going to buy it for him. Like, it's not about how much they spent or what they got. It's the fact that they thought of me that really meant a lot to me. So I'm trying to continue to think of how I can be giving it back to others as well. And what I can do to just be kind and do cool things for other people. And that's, you know, as far as like a positive message of the week, that is what I want to convey, to just, you know, figure out where you can be kind to people and do cool things, because not because you're expecting something back or you think that, man, you know, if I do this, the good luck's going to come back to me. You can't think about any of that stuff. You just got to do it under the sense of, I'm just want to do something cool for somebody. I want to make their day. I want to one day make somebody as happy as they made me in that moment with that Mario 3 action figure. That was really cool. It blew my mind. And again, it's an action figure, but it's the gesture that blows me away. So I'm so thankful for people like that in my life that remember me, thought of me, and did something cool for me. But more importantly, I'm happy to have them in my life, to have cool conversations with. I do value, I talk a lot with, one of them's not in my office anymore, but when they were, we would talk frequently. But the one that is in my office, we're talking every day, talking about cool music. And so I value that more than anything else. So just think about how cool you can be to somebody else and what you can do for somebody that'll make their day. And finally, as I said last week, and I can't echo this anymore, you know, because I did get some good feedback on this. You know, if you are at a point where you're, you know, pissed off, stressed out, upset, or whatever, and you feel like, you know, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this situation? As I said last week, and this is like an ongoing theme, because it's an ongoing theme in my life, and I have a feeling that others may possibly feel the same way, but it's like, you know, turn the car around and think about what you can do to make your situation better. So with that being said, go out, have a great rest of your week, be the best you that you can be. Can't stress that enough. Be cool to other people. Try to do cool stuff when you can, and just be the best you can be. That's all you can do. This is the Gary Cantrell Podcast, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I will tell you one more time the obligatory end of the show plug, garyspodcast.com/Amazon, or you can go to garyspodcast.com and click on the Amazon link in the top far right of the menu bar. Again, not looking to get rich off this podcast. I don't have a bunch of ad sponsors. I just have a simple Amazon affiliate link. When you click this link, it simply takes you to Amazon's front page with my affiliate code embedded in the page. And if you buy stuff while you're in that particular session, if you close the window out and come back, it doesn't count. You go to my link when you're ready to buy. And when you buy, I get a few pennies. And all I hope one day is just to be able to break even on this podcast. That's all I'm ultimately hoping to do. If it goes any farther than that, obviously I will be incredibly thankful, but that's not the goal. It's not what I'm looking for. I just want to do really cool podcasts, and if I can make some money at it, cool. If I don't, I won't, but I'll still do the podcast as long as I can. So this is the Gary Cantrell Podcast. Follow me at Gary's Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. There is an Instagram too, if that's your thing. I haven't posted anything there yet, but I'm going to definitely figure it out. And then my personal account, I don't get on there all the time, but I'm on there sometimes at Gary Cantrell. So can't believe how much ground we covered in an hour and 9 minutes, but this was awesome. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for your support. And if you like this podcast, spread the word. That's all I'd ever ask from you. Just spread the word. Hey, tell a friend. Hey, you like X, Y, and Z? Here's a guy that talks about that stuff. This is cool. If you like it. If you don't, it's cool too. And if you're on iTunes, it really does help to spread the word if you leave a review, leave a review. It helps others find the show. So if you can do that, that's awesome too. There's a little more ground to cover there. So if you don't have the time, if you don't feel like it, it's fine. But if you're somebody that listens to my podcast and you think that you're going to be listening every week and you're really into what I do, you can really help me out big time by leaving a review on iTunes for this podcast. It just helps with visibility for the podcast, and they see enough of those and it increases your ranking and so on and so forth. So hour and 10 minutes of a podcast. Holy crap. I had a blast. I look forward to doing more podcasts like this where there's so much cool stuff to talk about that an hour just goes by like that. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the kind words. Go out there this week. Be the best person you can be. Be awesome to others. Have a great week and live life to the fullest. Thanks, guys.